Up next, the new track on Hurricane Helene is in. What changes are we looking at, and how might that impact the Bay Area? We'll talk about
in the next 24 hours, Hurricane Helene will make landfall. And brand new video from Cancun shows the intensity of this tropical system. As people prepare for the storm, the projected path continues to be headed towards the Panhandle. And it's expected to become a Category 4 hurricane. ABC.
I'm used to it. I've lived here all my life. I ride them out.
And as the hurricane approaches, first responders in several parts of the Bay Area are warning those in mandatory evacuation zones to take orders seriously.
Please leave this area. A mandatory evacuation has been ordered.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us on this special edition of Tampa Bay Tonight. I'm Wendy Ryan. We have crews in several counties along the coast where Hurricane Helene is threatening communities. But before we check in with them, Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips has the very latest on the storm's latest track. Dennis?
Hey, Wendy. So, yeah, the new numbers just came in, and not really much change as we expected. I mean, these models and this track have been solid for like 3 or 4 days. And at this point, we're less than area. Still, tropical storm warning in effect for the areas in blue. The only areas in red under hurricane warning would be Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus from around US 19 to the west. Now, I'm on the record as saying I do not think we see sustained hurricane force winds in the Bay Area. We might see some gusts, especially in Citrus County, up to 65, even over to 70 in a couple of spots. But when we say sustained winds, that's really what a hurricane is. You have to have minimum winds of 74 miles an hour for 60 seconds or longer. And I just don't think we're going to see that. What we are going to see, unfortunately, is a significant surge threat. And we'll get into that in just a second. So here's the latest. It's actually slowed down its forward speed just miles an hour. It was at 12, so that's something we'll have to watch. But the wind's still locked in at 85 miles an hour, and it certainly still has that look of, and matter of fact, recon has been flying in, and they did find an eye wall, but it was a little ragged in a few spots, so there might be a bit of shear or possibly a little bit of drier air coming in. But as it moves north over the next 12 hours, I mean, it's prime areas for development. It's going over the loop current. It's going over very, very warm water. And I just don't see any way how this doesn't develop and do so rapidly. And because of that, the Hurricane Center is now forecasting by tomorrow morning, Cat 2 by tomorrow evening, just before landfall at a Category 4 status. And there are some models that are even stronger than that. Now, the fact that it's expected to move pretty quickly is a good thing, because the faster it moves through, obviously the less time it has to develop further. So, you know, that's something that we'll continue to watch. But this brings landfall in the Big Bend right around 8 o'clock tomorrow night, well to the west of our area. And I get it. So many folks continue to say, but yeah, can't it make a hard right or a hook? And, you know, you bring up situations like Charlie and Irma and Ian and whatnot. This is just a completely different situation. We've got a big blocking high over here, a low here, and it's found a highway in between, and that's where it's going to go. Now, might it move a bit to the right or the left? Sure. There's always going to be little small variations, but overall, the track is really solid. The Hurricane Center's forecast is now right in the middle of the models both ways, and unfortunately, even though that is good news for us, this is going to be a devastating hurricane for parts of the Big Bend, and it is very close, dangerously close to Tallahassee. I mean, there's a chance, and remember, the extreme winds with these storms are maybe only 5 to 10 miles from the center. Okay, so a very small area. There's very much the chance that that eye might be 20 miles east or west and could miss the bulk of Tallahassee, but it's obviously a very close call. Now, for us, again, we've already gone over it. I don't see winds higher than gusts of 65 to 70. The surge is going to be an issue, and one that I think we're going to be talking a lot about over the next hour. Power outages, yeah, why not? We lose power when we get our afternoon thunderstorms. Well, if we get winds of 55 to 65, then yeah, tomorrow evening, I think there's a pretty decent chance, especially in our northern counties, of seeing a power outage, because our northern counties will have heavier winds than our southern counties. And speaking of the winds, The yellow color, 40 to 58 gusts, not sustained. Look at the 58 to 73. Never really near our area, just sort of touching, scooting by areas of Citrus County and up around Cedar Key. So again, at this point, winds not the biggest issue, surge a much larger issue, and we'll talk about that more coming up in a few minutes.
All right, thanks, Dan. We'll check back with you. One of the places bracing for Hurricane Helene is Steinhatchee. People there are preparing for the storm while remembering what happened with Hurricane Idalia last year. This video on the right of your screen is the damage Idalia left behind as a Category 3 hurricane. And our Chad Mills is there showing us what's happening before the storm makes landfall tomorrow night. Chad, thank you. We're checking in with our crews all along the Florida coast tonight to show you how people along the Bay Area are preparing for Hurricane Helene. Coming up next, our Julie Solomon spoke to people in Pasco County.
Tracking Helene with Florida's most accurate ABC Action News.
If you live in Zone A, the time to evacuate is now. Forecasters are predicting over 10 feet of storm surge along Pasco County's coastline. This is incredibly dangerous, and it's why we've issued evacuation orders along Pasco County's coast. Combine that with the high winds, and there's a chance that our emergency crews will be unable to get to you if you don't evacuate.
The message tonight from Pasco County leaders: plan to be in a safe place to ride out the storm. By 8 a.m. tomorrow, many sandbag locations will close. Our Julie Solomon spoke to homeowners who were working to prepare their homes before conditions deteriorate. Julie, thank you. Let's check back in with Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips. And Dennis, I know you got that new track just come out 11 o'clock, 15 minutes ago, and there's really no change, right?
No, and I don't think the heavier winds are going to start for us until later tomorrow afternoon. So if you've already gone through your hurricane snacks, you probably could go tomorrow morning and still be okay.
Right. Got to get more, though.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, I mean, you could go to the store and get more, because I think the heavier winds are going to be, 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon until maybe 9, 10 o'clock at night. And the surge issue will be the highest as well in the evening. So we're looking at some rain across the area. Obviously, this is coming in from Helene. And if you look down to the south, there's a lot more where this came from. Still not a tremendously organized system, but it is large. As a matter of fact, it's in the 90th percentile in terms of size for average hurricanes at that part of the Caribbean where they come from. So it's a big one, as they say. And that means that we're going to continue to see the larger the storm. It takes longer for it to get going, but once it does, it often can become more powerful and takes longer for it to slow down, which is going to be significant, because I'm telling you, there's going to be tropical storm winds in Atlanta. I mean, there's going to be tropical storm winds in Tennessee. This thing is going to fly from south to north as the rains continue to move from south to north down to our south as well. So again, overnight, nothing to worry about. Tomorrow morning, really nothing to worry about. Yes, it'll be breezy. It'll be gusty at times. But if you have to get something done tomorrow morning, you still can. And I'm even going to throw this out here. So look, we'll get into it in just a second when I show you the map. There's some rain out there right now. But a lot of people want to know, especially in the Tallahassee area. I mean, my son came home yesterday. I know there are some folks who are riding it out up north. And if they decide last minute, when they start to see all of this weather moving up to the north, do they still have time to leave? You kind of do in the morning. Not for us. And by the way, that's actually a very good question, because Wendy and I were talking about that. We had a DPL tonight that ran from 7 to 8, and people were asking about evacuations. Like, let's say you live in a mandatory evacuation zone in our area, and you decide not until tomorrow morning, you know what, I changed my mind, I want to get out of here. You can go east and then go south. I wouldn't advise going south on 75. But in the early morning hours, you could absolutely take I-4 all the way over to 95 and then take 95 down south, where you won't have anything to worry about. So that is an option for you, just as options up north in the Tallahassee area. Last minute changes, deciding I don't want to go through this. You can go to the east-southeast as long as it's early in the day, like we're talking first thing in the morning, because by about 8 or 9 o'clock, you're going to see landfall, and it's going to be a major Category 4 hurricane. I just don't think there's any way around it, unfortunately. For us, again, as we mentioned earlier, we have tropical storm warnings. We have hurricane warnings in a real small area. So here's what's happening with the latest advisory. The forward motion has slowed down a little bit. That is something we will have to watch overnight. I don't think it's going to continue. It's like a snowball going downhill. As Floridians, maybe some of you haven't seen snowballs going downhill, but they go faster. They pick up the pace as they go. And that's what this is going to do, because it's going to find an area between two air masses and just going to scoot right through them. It's going to be helped in this direction one way and this direction in the other way, and it's going to go right there. And that's why the models really haven't changed much, because it's kind of an easy forecast in terms of track. A lot of times when we look at these things, they're a real bear to try to forecast, because there's all these variables. Is this going to be stronger? Is this going to be weaker? Not this time. I mean, which is why the margin of error is so slim. Now, granted, the margin of error is based on the average error over a 24-hour period. And 24 hours out, you got to figure it's going to be pretty accurate, which is why we're nowhere near that cone of uncertainty. I mean, might there be a little bit of a bump to the right or left? Sure, they often happen. But overall, this track really isn't going to change much. This is going to be landfall in the Big Bend area, unfortunately, as a catastrophic Category 4 hurricane with surge possibly 15 to 20 feet in those areas. Now, there's plenty of spots along this path where there's not much there. And we are hoping that it can find one of those places. For us, look, I've been saying this for a couple of days now. I don't think we see hurricane winds. I think at least sustained. I mean, yeah, we might see some gusts, 55, 60, 65, even Citrus County, maybe up to 70 tomorrow evening, but not sustained winds that really cause issues. So, yes, we'll have some power outages. Yes, we'll have some trees down, just because probably with all the rain we've had, there's a lot of weak roots on there. Maybe some trees will go. But overall, you're not going to expect a lot of wind damage for us. Our biggest concern is obviously the surge. And that's probably the largest concern for folks in our area, at least if you live anywhere near the water. The NAC track is right in the middle of the spaghetti models. I mean, again, look, where Tallahassee is over here. If it's over this way, Tallahassee's not going to get as much. I mean, they'll get hurricane winds, but not as much. And by the way, right now, hurricane force winds only extend 35 miles out from the center. That's just the hurricane winds. The extreme winds, when they form, maybe 5 miles. So, I mean, there's a legitimate chance if this were to go just a little bit more right or left, it would be in an area where there's a lot less people and a lot less damage. So that possibility does exist and something we're going to hope for. For us, the surge, it's all about coastal areas or areas along the bay or along a river or whatnot. And Pasco County northward, I think that surge could be pretty significant, every bit as big as Adalia, if not bigger. So that's why you got those mandatory evacuation notifications, because you just don't want to take a chance with that. The power outages, well, the winds will be strongest late afternoon through the evening. So that's why we think between about 6 o'clock and midnight, there's going to be some power outages. I mean, we lose power in the summertime with our afternoon storms. This is going to be a 6 or 7 hour thunderstorm, at least in terms of wind. So that's something we'll have to continue to watch. Overall, though, the heaviest winds will stay offshore. What about specific winds? All right, let's talk about it. Wind gusts. Around lunchtime, 35 miles an hour. Again, you can get around tomorrow morning. Be a little breezy, but you can get around. And even in the mid-afternoon, 30 to 40. But building by about 4 o'clock, 40 to 50, and then 50 to 60 by the evening hours, as the center of Helene is just to our west, and potentially even around 70 by mid to late evening and into areas around Crystal River. That's the way things are going to play out, the way I see it. And by Friday, this is gone. It's over. So there it is. Tomorrow's the day. Friday improvements. And believe it or not, I think we're going to have a really nice weekend with temperatures under sunny skies in the upper 80s. Wendy?
All right. Thanks, Dan. Coming up, a look at how Duke Energy is getting ready to respond to power outages.
As we go through this hurricane season together, my goal is to keep you informed while letting you know what to expect. No hype, just the facts. No matter what happens, we've got you covered right here on ABC Action News.
Welcome back. Thousands of crews from Duke Energy are now preparing to respond to power outages from Hurricane Helene. Our Action Air 1 flew over Tropicana Field in St. Pete today as trucks started to arrive. Crews will be staged there at the Trop and at several other locations throughout Florida.
So this is something where we're bringing crews in, we're getting our equipment ready, we're making sure that we can respond quickly. But really, storm prep, especially in Florida, is year-round.
You can sign up for alerts with Duke Energy to get updates on power outages. If you lose power, text the word out to 57801. We have that number on your screen right now, and you can also report outages online. And make sure to stay with us on this special edition of Tampa Bay Tonight. Ahead, we're hearing from people in Crystal River, Tampa, and Tallahassee. And another look at Florida's most accurate forecast with Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips.
ABC Action News is sponsored by Handyman Roofing, serving Tampa Bay since 1978. Tracking Helene with Florida's most accurate ABC Action News.
Thank you for staying with us on the special edition of Tampa Bay Tonight. I'm Wendy Ryan, and I'm joined by Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips. Of course, we're continuing to track Hurricane Helene. Dennis, the latest advisory came out just about 30 minutes ago. Not much has changed, right?
No, nothing's changed, really. It's still at 85 miles an hour, and the track is still expected to go into the Big Bend area. So here are the probability of tropical storm force winds. The purple color is 100%. So obviously there's where landfall is. And then you look at our area. We're not quite at 100% for tropical storm force winds, but we're in the red, the dark red color. So that's 80 to 90%. So along the coast, and this is kind of significant, you look along the coast, the probabilities are very high that we're going to see tropical storm force winds. Look at our inland areas, 40%, 50%. I mean, I can guarantee you there's going to be people in Polk County tomorrow in Highlands, Harding, and Soto say, you know what? Where's all this weather everybody was talking about? I mean, because you're not going to get much. You're not. You're going to get some wind, 40-ish, 45. You're going to get some rain. Now, we will remember we're on the east side of a pretty big storm, so I suspect there will be some tornado watches issued as well. But remember how we were saying it's a very fast-moving storm, right? So because it isn't going to be lingering like Debbie did for the longest time, the rainfall totals are not going to be nearly as impressive as they were with Debbie, and that's a good thing. I mean, we're talking 2 to 3, maybe 4 inches of rain, and there's always going to be spots where the training sets up that there will be higher totals. But even in the Panhandle, I mean, Tallahassee's pretty much the bullseye right now at 5.5 inches of rain. But look how that color, that heavy rain, extends all the way into northern Georgia. Because it's such a big storm and it's going to be moving so quickly, it won't weaken very quickly once it moves into Georgia. So I think northern Georgia and into Tennessee is still going to pick up tropical storm force winds. And with the mountains there, they are going to get a ton of rain. So our biggest concern is, again, the storm surge. And if you're not familiar with it, and we get a lot of folks who didn't live here before, and now this might be their first storm, not familiar with what storm surge is, nothing to do with rainfall. Nothing. That's freshwater flooding. Debbie, that flooding was not storm surge. That was freshwater flooding, rainfall, too much rain, right? Surge is the actual Gulf water being pushed in by a storm. And whether it goes into an area with a concave exit, like the bay, where it has to go to the end and then just lift up because there's nowhere to go, or whether it goes into coastal areas where the water gets shallow, the water builds. And when it builds, it goes inland. And I'll tell you, sometimes in Pasco and Hernando County, you can see that surge push in 1/4 mile. I mean, not as high as it is in some places. And this kind of explains what storm surge is. You know, you get the water that rises as it's pushed in, but then at the same time, you have waves on top of that water rise. Now, that 12 feet is extreme, but there's the possibility there could be some 12 feet surge north of Citrus County into Levy County and into the Big Bend area. We'll talk more about that coming up in a couple of minutes.
All right, thanks, Dan. We'll check back with you. Meanwhile, in Crystal River, the mayor is urging people to take a vaccine. Counselors spoke to some who say they're tired of major weather events. Eric, thank you. Publix is closing several stores in Pinellas, Hillsborough, Pasco, Hernando, Manatee, and Sarasota counties tomorrow. We have a list of what's open and closed in the Bay Area on our website at abcactionnews.com. And the precautions the city of Tampa is now taking to keep people safe throughout the city. That's next on Tampa Bay Tonight.
Severe weather's closing in. The ABC Action News Storm Tracker hits the road for you. A weather station on wheels. The Storm Tracker shows you what's really going on outside so you can keep your family safe.
ABC Action News Storm Tracker is sponsored by Renewal by Andersen. ABC Action News is sponsored by Rubenstein Law.
Tampa General Hospital put up this aqua fence around the hospital on Davis Island, and it's capable of holding back up to 15 feet of storm surge. That facility was just one of many around Tampa protecting themselves for the threat of storm surge. Our reporter Rebecca Petit shows us what the city looks like ahead of Hurricane Helene. All right, let's check back in with Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips. Dennis, you've said for days now it's not going to be the wind for the Bay Area. It's going to be the flooding and the storm surge, right?
Yeah, especially for the coast.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing to remember. I mean, percentages are a pretty large percentage.
Sure, yeah.
So the impact on you is going to be minimal. I mean, are we going to have wind? Yes, 55, maybe 60. Are we going to have some power outages? Yep, like we do in the summertime. I think a little more widespread because the wind will last longer. But overall, the Bay Area, in terms of non-surge issues, is going to dodge a bullet. But unfortunately, the Panhandle will not. Tallahassee probably will not. And our coastal areas, unfortunately, will not. This is a real surge situation, probably worse than it was with Idalia and with Ada. And we'll touch on that in just a minute. But I guess the only thing about it now that's different is you're getting a ton of notice in these areas where evacuations have been mandatory since this morning, and a lot of folks have left. I mean, I think we all know there's going to be a lot that aren't going to leave because that's just the way it is. But overall, the surge threat remains high, but not nearly as high as it's going to be up north, where they could see a 20-foot surge. They could see an Ian-like surge. Now, I would not expect it to make landfall in an area that's as populated as Fort Myers is along the coast, which was obviously horrific with Ian. But unfortunately, this track is really close to Tallahassee. And we might luck out, and it might go 15 miles one direction or the other, which would bring most of the core winds, the extreme winds, outside of downtown Tallahassee. But boy, it is going to be a very, very close call. Still a lot of rain down south. It's just getting going. Winds of 85 miles an hour. And now that the center is out in the open waters of the Gulf, I have no doubt overnight and tomorrow it is going to do some really heavy intensification. We call it rapid intensification, where the pressure drops 24 millibars in 24 hours. And I think that's absolutely going to happen. It's going to get stronger. Upper 70s to low 80s right now outside. Rain, scattered showers. So overnight and even into tomorrow morning, through the morning, if you have to get something done, I still think you can. I mean, 30, 35 mile an hour winds. Look, we get that a lot stronger than that in our afternoon thunderstorms. So at least the first half of the day, while I'm not saying it's going to be a great day, you're not stuck. I do think you can get around. But later in the afternoon is when things start to go downhill pretty quickly and into the evening hours. Tropical storm warnings, hurricane warnings. Do not believe we see sustained hurricane force winds in the Bay Area. If there's one spot that might, it would be northern Citrus County, since you're a lot closer to where landfall is going to occur. Last a little bit, that's not good. I do think it eventually is going to pick back up its forward speed. Remember, we don't want slow. Slower gives it more time to develop. Slower gives it more time to rain. We want fast. We want this to pick up its forward speed, and inevitably it's going to. There's just no way around it. The weather features are in place, and they're not going anywhere. I mean, might there be a subtle movement a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left? Absolutely. I mean, we all know that happens pretty regularly with hurricanes. But the overall track is really solid and has been for days, and that's unfortunately not good news for the northern sections of the Big Bend, Tallahassee. Tallahassee is going to be a call about 15 miles either way. I mean, there is absolutely the chance the worst could miss Tallahassee, but there's also a chance this thing could go right over it with winds of 120 or 130 miles an hour, which would make it the worst hurricane on record in downtown Tallahassee. So, you know, whether or not you have kids or family or friends in that area, you know, it's getting to the point now where it's almost, not quite, but almost too late to get out of Dodge. I do think tomorrow morning you could, but you would probably want to go due east right along I-10 and then maybe go south if there were those who were going to evacuate. And even for us, you know, if you live in an evacuation zone and you're just not sure, take I-4 and then go out to 95 if you wanted to. I mean, I don't know how traffic's going to be tomorrow, but you would have time in the morning. But in the afternoon, it's going to go downhill really fast. The spaghetti models, I mean, there is a little bit of leeway on this, right? I mean, the track is right there from the NHC, but, you know, there's a chance. And if we're only talking 10 or 15 miles for the worst of the wind, it is a possibility. Hurricane force winds, the odds are near zero for us. They're not zero, but they're near zero. And obviously a very thin line as this continues to move north. Rainfall totals, anywhere from 2, 3, 4 inches in our area, up to 5 or 6. As long as it moves fast, it's not going to have a time to dump a ton of rain in a spot. Storm surge totals. Storm surge, anywhere from 5 to 8 feet in the bay, 5 to 8 feet along the coast, 4 to 7 feet Sarasota County, 8 to 12 feet north towards Citrus County, 12 to 18 feet north. That is water rise as the storm moves in, pushes water, and causes that we could very well see even worse than any of the others we've seen over the last decades. So it is the real deal. High tide would be tomorrow evening. It's not quite as high of a tide as it would have been in the morning, but the timing looks to be mid to late evening when the winds come around after the storm passes us and you see more of an onshore flow. And yeah, there could be some power outages, especially in our northern counties where the winds will be stronger. But overall, I think the wind field gives tropical storm force winds for a good portion of the state, pretty much all of the state, but the heaviest winds remain offshore. It's a close call, but I do think they are going to stay offshore. And then by Friday, it's gone. This is into Georgia and the Tennessee Valley. And then by the weekend, believe it or not, we're back to sunny skies with high temperatures in the upper 80s. Wendy?
All right, thanks, Dan. Well, one of the areas expected to feel some of the strongest effects from Hurricane Helene is Tallahassee. We spoke to people in Florida's capital city. That's next.
Prepare for the storm with the ABC Action News weather team.
Lightning can strike over 13 miles away from a storm cloud. You may not see the lightning strike, but you're still close enough to be in harm's way. After all, Tampa Bay is the lightning capital of North America for a reason. If you hear thunder, go indoors immediately.
From our team at West Shore Home, stay safe this hurricane season and always listen to local experts when it comes to evacuations.
Many in the Florida Panhandle and the Big Bend area are now bracing themselves for another powerful hurricane. This as memories of recent destructive storms are not only fresh in their minds, they're still recovering from them. ABC Action News anchor Paula Grown is in position in Tallahassee talking to residents as they get ready to ride out Hurricane Helene. Paul, thank you. Next, a look at how Tampa International Airport is preparing for Hurricane Helene. That's right after a quick break. An update now on Heart services. Heart will suspend all operations on Thursday. That includes the Heart bus service, Heart Plus, Heart Flex, and the streetcar. And here's an alert for anyone who has travel plans tomorrow. Tampa International Airport is now shutting down operations in just a couple hours. This is starting at 2 a.m. and includes both passenger planes and cargo planes. They're not permitting any stranded passengers to stay, and the only individuals left at TPA will be 100 employees called storm riders. They're the only ones sticking around to determine when things can reopen.
Shutting down an airport is up to our travelers. It is not something that we take lightly. It is not something that we like to do. And we put a lot of thought and planning and precision into making that decision. But at the end of the day, we have to do what we believe is in the best interest of the safety of our airport, the 10,000 employees that work out here, and of course, our travelers.
Airport officials say they are hopeful about reopening sometime on Friday. And we'll have another look at Florida's most accurate forecast with Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips when this special edition of Tampa Bay Tonight returns. All right, let's get a final check of Hurricane Helene's latest track with Chief Meteorologist Dennis Phillips.
Yeah, I do want to mention something, though. We talked about this earlier on. I've been getting these questions now for the last 4 or 5 days. Let's go through it. 1, is my PIE or PIE?
Is it? Yes, it is, because they're closed in 2 hours.
2, can I go to Disney on Thursday? And we found out that they're actually opening Disney, they're keeping it open later.
Yes, till like 8.
It normally stays open till 6.
Maybe that might change tomorrow, but for now, yeah.
And then the lastly is, can I walk my dog at 4:23 tomorrow afternoon? Will it be okay? And I say yes.
Yeah, they might have some rain, though.
Little rain.
And a little rain.
Yeah. But, I mean, you look outside.
There you go.
I mean, there it is. For us, the warnings haven't changed. Neither has the intensity of this storm. The track hasn't changed either. That's good for us. That's not good for the Panhandle. This is going to be a really, really bad storm for the Panhandle, potentially Tallahassee. So we'll see how it plays out.
All right, and we'll be here every step of the way. We've got all the information you need right now about Hurricane Helene on our website. Take out your phone, scan that QR code on your screen. It will help you prepare for the storm. ABC Action News is always on when you need us. Please make sure to add ABC Action News Plus to your Connect Safe.
We now join our regularly scheduled program already in progress.